And on today's show, how women learn and what's important to them. Part one of this week's series on what women want from financial advisors. With nationally recognized woman strategist, adult educator, and adjunct professor at Roosevelt University, Dr. Barb Provo. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Innsmark, Life Specs, and Backroom Technician. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome to the show, Barb.
Thanks, Steve.
I should say Dr. Barb.
Right.
When I think about your doctorate, we're going to be talking about how adults learn. I'm just completely off base when I first met you because I'm thinking like, well, I'm doing my seminar, I'm teaching it, and you're saying, well, adults don't really learn like you talk. And I'm thinking, wow, what does that mean? And I think much of our marketing, much of our sales manuals, brochures, propaganda, coming from carriers, financial institutions, mutual fund vendors, I think we don't think about how adults read things. And of course, consumers aren't educated in our area, which even complicates it even the more.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about how do adults think?
Well, adults learn in a lot of different ways, different from children. So adults bring a lot of experience to the table. So we have to remember to recognize that and appreciate that. And also, typically, adults are coming to a learning situation when they need to learn something. Something's happened in their life. Either they need to retool, get back into the workforce, or they've gotten a promotion, they need to learn a new skill or a new trade. Maybe they've gone through a life change, divorce, or death in the family, and they come to these situations where they need to learn something. So they're coming with an objective in mind. By the end of this session, by the end of this workshop, by the end of this course, I need to be able to do something differently. And that's typically what the motivation is for adults to come to a learning situation.
Well, I remember when I first I already had my insurance licenses and they asked me to come and learn securities. Series 6 was a pretty easy exam. Series 22 was a little tougher. But then I went to get the Series 7 and it was a learning experience. And I'm not really sure that they made that test for people in their midlife to educate in a 5-day course. That test is brutal, most brutal test I've ever taken. I'm not sure we talk that way, even in our industry. We're talking to consumers, we're talking B2B, business to business. I don't think we understand how we learn as an adult and how critical that could be in closing, sales, prospecting, all those things matter.
True. And a lot of it is because the expert will come to the conversation with all of their vernacular and all of their terms, and when they go to the situation where they're selling something to someone, the person you're selling to doesn't have that level of information. So you can't start right in the middle or even at the tail end and go in with all of your highfalutin terminology and spill it out onto the table and assume that that person there knows what you're talking about, because the most important thing is they're not going to tell you. Oftentimes they don't understand what you're saying.
So I've learned in my practice, I start at the beginning, I treat everybody like a beginner. I try not to insult them with elementary information. They have to tell me you can bring it up. I kind of know that. I think do you think that assumption is too simplistic?
Yes. I wouldn't start at that level at all. I would just ask them, tell me a little bit about where you are today with your financial information, and have a dialogue with them and see what kind of conversation unfolds so that you can determine where are they with their level of knowledge on finances.
If I'm looking at the ability to convey expert information without industrial language, without acronyms, without the things that are germane to the way I talk with my colleagues, it's so hard to really divest myself from my background.
It's hard, yeah, but you need to really retreat and maybe even practice or go through your dialogue with somebody who you can practice with and say, do you understand this? Because a lot of times people will use terms and fly right through it and make grand assumptions. Simple terms like an annuity. Well, an annuity is a complex investment vehicle to some people. To you, you understand all the pieces and parts of it. But the customer or the client is not going to say, now explain that to me again. I'm not quite sure how that works in. So you can't just use those terms, and there's tons of terms that you guys probably don't even realize all the acronyms, the terms that you use in your day-to-day conversation that your client or customer does not understand.
Well, I think when I'm on a first contact interview, never met the client before the prospect, maybe I was referred, maybe it came off the internet from social media. When I'm looking at a person for the first time, and you said, you want them to discuss their financial situation or at least give them an idea. How do I pick up what information I think they know. Are they can from that conversation, can I say, oh, they are a beginner? Oh, they're intermediate. They got some information here. Or no, they're well read. They're well educated. They've been I can tell that they actually can converse.
I think you can certainly discern a certain level, whether it's just beginning, intermediate, or advanced knowledge of the industry or of the investments by what have they invested in so far, or what are the questions that they're asking. Just open the dialogue with them to say, tell me a little bit about your finances to date, and see what they say, see what questions they start asking you, and you're going to start to very easily understand what level they're coming to you at.
How important is it for me to find out if they're prepared to act on any of my recommendations or our conversation? How important is that? Does that matter?
I don't think that's the first thing you need to think about. I mean, when you say prepared to act, are you saying prepared to purchase?
Well, not so much purchase, but are we meeting because they're unhappy with their situation and they're prepared to act or change? That's why they're maybe meeting with me or getting a second opinion.
So what do you think you would do with that?
Well, no, I'm the interviewer. Okay, you're the interviewee.
Well, you would ask them.
Yeah.
What is your purpose for coming to meet with me today? What are your concerns?
I think most of our advisors that are watching would say part of this came from referred. We have a good real experienced advisors have referrals.
Yes.
But another one is they meet people in social events and they find out what they do. And the person says, have you ever had a second opinion? Although that's a very good prospecting tool that we use. So if he said, have you ever had somebody look at this? And would that bring any comfort to you or solace for you to look at, see if we can confirm or deny that it's what you're into is a good deal? So I think when we're exchanging information like that, I think it's a communication. We're at a first contact interviews. I think are very stressful for most advisors. We know, but we don't know how to engage it, and we don't know how adults learn, and we don't know how to convey it in a way that they'll pick it up and actually understand what I just said. I think that's a difficulty.
I think it is a difficulty on both sides of the table. So I think a lot of that is just really starting that conversation with an open-ended question that says, what brings you to this meeting today? What are your concerns? How can I help you? And just sit back and listen.
We come back from the break. We're going to tweak this a little bit and say not only how do adults learn, but how do adult women learn? We'll be right back after the break. It's not how much money you make for your clients, it's how much money they get to keep, especially in retirement. But retirement income could cause Social Security benefits to be taxed. One tax advantage alternative is life insurance designed as a non-modified endowment contract that can generate tax-free income without taxing Social Security benefits. These contracts offer differing funding options depending upon your client's risk tolerance. For more information on how life insurance can be part of your retirement planning, just email me at steve@downtobusiness.tv. Brought to you by Ash Brokerage, the practice enhancement company. Well, welcome back to our second segment. Of course, we're with Dr. Barb Provost, her PhDs in How Adults Learn, and I want to tweak our segment here and talk about how women learn differently than men. I think they do. I think they approach things. I think their methodology. I think they're emotionally more engaged than the advisor is. And I want to make sure, because why do I even care about this subject? Because women are going to have the purse strings of America within the next decade. The transfer of wealth. It's not just the transfer of wealth, it's transferring to the surviving World War II and Korean female spouse. And who's taking care of them? Their baby boomer daughters. Right. And so we need to change our entire engagement. I almost like to call it corporate courtship, right? So talk to me about, how do they hear us? How do they learn? What's the way to go on this? Being a guy, I want to understand the mentality and what I really need to do to bring engagement.
Okay, this is so important, because when a woman will come to a financial meeting, a lot of times, and the data shows this, if a man and women are engaged in the conversation, the man wants to know what's the amount they're going to earn, how long it's going to take, what's the product, so on and so forth. The woman is thinking, is this person going to be able to communicate with me? Will he be there to answer my questions? Do I trust him enough to ask questions that might seem remedial at this point? Will he make decisions with my best
interest in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, as you well know, women, they live longer than men, so they have to really stretch out their monies to last a lot longer. They also are concerned about their children, their children's welfare, and they want to make sure that they have monies that will suffice them in their long-term health care as well. So a lot of the thoughts and ideas that are going through her mind, she may not be verbally asking you at this point, but she's getting a sense from you on, can I start to trust this person?
I've heard you say this in other settings. You say women don't want to be sold. They don't want to be marketed to. They don't want to feel like they're just being pressured or pushed into any product purchase at all.
True.
So first contact with women is way different than maybe a first contact with a guy. Maybe totally different engagement.
True. And oftentimes, women will need to go back and think about what they want. A lot of times when a woman will say, I need to think about it, it might be a very important message to you that you have not given me all the information that I need to make a decision. It also might be a way of politely saying no without saying no. So oftentimes a response to that could be, what else can I provide for you to help you make your decision? And no pushing, but let me know what else I can provide for you. Here's how you can contact me. And then you may have to wait and may not sell something in that first meeting.
I've noticed, because now there's more women in the workforce. They're higher educated women.
Yes.
They're college. We're going into higher degrees of formal education. And there's a movement from the home into the workforce. And this has been a huge cultural revolution over the last 40 years. So we know that this is happening, but I've noticed that women are much more focused on the domestic front of home expenses, debt, paying off mortgage, job security. I mean, not necessarily retirement.
Right.
They're kind of in the now,
True.
not in the future.
Yes. And that's important too, because the data shows, like you're saying, you know, the number of women with their college degrees has tripled. There's a lot more women in the workforce. There's a lot more women running single households with the increase of divorce, and our whole household makeup is changing. So women need to plan more than ever before for their retirement because they're going to live longer, and they have less money to stretch over those years because oftentimes they're out of the workforce. The average is 12 years, either caring for children or sometimes caring for an ailing parent or an ailing spouse or other relative. So when they get back to the workforce, they're not making as much money. They haven't had as much money going into the retirement funds. And so they have to stretch what they do have over a longer period of time.
I've noticed, and this is a present day stat, that almost half of all the household's money, including the investable side of this equation, is already controlled by women. We think over the next 10 years, the stats are, the trend is just, it's a tsunami coming.
Yes.
And they will own the purse strings of America. Knowing that that's true, and knowing that women do live longer, and much of the time, especially with the same age counterpart, you're looking at maybe 8 years to 10 years, difference.
Yes.
So it's not a small number, it's a large number.
It is. So women now than ever before are under planning for the retirement when they really should be over planning for the retirement. And the reason for that is because they fear the process of having to deal with the money, make the decisions, have the conversations, because they don't feel equipped, prepared, they don't feel like they've found someone they can trust, or they don't feel safe about making those decisions.
So this is, if I hear you right, this is like a huge opportunity for advisors to be able to address exactly what you just said.
Yes, it's huge.
Well, I'm looking at some of the things, and when you talk about long-term, one of the things I saw in one of your notes is the need for long-term care planning. Almost always, the male precedes the female in death. And her time, whether it's going to be assisted living or nursing home, people are I'm building my home in thinking of my future geriatric ways, my cabinets, my bathroom setup, everything. Everybody's talking that way. So when I'm addressing it, how high a priority is that? Because we know we're in the now. We're trying to get people to think about their retirement, which they're not doing. As you said, they need to overthink it maybe.
Yes, they do.
But I'm curious about the thought of long-term care, because that is a major play for females late in their life. I mean, gals in their 80s and 90s. Those are realities now.
Well, first of all, it's expensive, and like you just said, women are thinking about their operational day-to-day expenses in their budgets for their homes. They're thinking about paying off any debt, paying off their mortgage, still providing for their children, their children's education. So they're thinking about the here and now, keeping the the functions running in the household. they're not always thinking about what can happen in the long term and what they are going to need for themselves, because they're, for the most part, may be alone and have to care for themselves. That's a concern as well. There's a big gap there that needs to be addressed.
Well, this is our introduction all this week on what women want from advisors. And that's all the time we have for today. Remember, before moving forward with any of the ideas on the show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or your broker-dealer compliance officer. Missed an episode? Just hop out to our video archives. And remember, you could be wiser as an educated advisor. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you tomorrow.